21st, 2022, Philipstown Planning Board meeting. We're going to ask you all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I'm going to ask Cheryl, our secretary, to take the roll call.
Kim Connor.
Here.
Dennis Gagnon.
Here.
Laura O'Connell.
Here.
Neil Toman.
Here.
Heidi Wendell.
Here.
And Neil Zuckerman is not here.
Take the roll. Okay, and Neil Zuckerman is not joining us tonight. We're going to start with the approval of the minutes. Steve, can we approve them all at once, or do we have to approve them individually?
You could approve them all at once, but generally speaking, you want to approve them individually to see if anybody has changes. Otherwise, you'd have to, break the motion up and so
Okay.
forth.
So for the March 6th Sadlon Wenske site visit, does anybody have any comments? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Neil Toman, second. Laura, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. February 17th, regular meeting minutes. Any corrections, additions? Laura, all in favor? Anyone want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Neil Toman,
I'll
second. Peter?
Yep.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. March 17th, regular meeting minutes. Any corrections, additions, et cetera? No? Okay, motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Peter Lewis, second.
Second.
Neil Toman, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so we are in receipt of some correspondence from neighbors at 2830 Hudson River Lane. That is not on the agenda tonight in terms of something that a project that we're going to discuss. 8:30. So Steve, I imagine what we do with this is we discuss it once it's on the agenda.
That's right. This is on the Wildrick, I believe it's site plan application, and they're not on the agenda this evening. I don't believe we've even had a public hearing on that. Board should just note for the record, it's received it. And when Wildrick comes back on the agenda, it'll be a matter that's in the record.
Okay. So the next thing is under old business. The Sadlon and Wenske 825 Route 90 Garrison, which is a minor project, a development of a new single-family dwelling, accessory building, and in-ground swimming pool to be served by a new septic system and water well and related site improvements. So this is, we have resolutions?
Yeah, resolutions were prepared at the board's direction. You have it before you tonight. The board has accomplished all necessary procedural matters. You've conducted a public hearing. And as I said, made all referrals. You're now at a point to adopt the resolution before you, and it's in a very standard form that the board utilizes and identifies the specific conditions of approval applicable to the project, being payment of all outstanding fees and receipt of written approval from New York State Department of Transportation for the highway access.
Okay, Steve, do you have any comments on this?
No, the board directed that these approvals be prepared at the last meeting. They're ready to be voted on.
Okay, does anyone on the board have any comments? No? So I think then we're ready to approve the resolutions. And I don't know why I don't have them in front of me, but so usually we do that as it's a two-step, or is it just, yeah?
No, it's just
Been a long
approval.
time.
This
Okay.
one, there's no secret.
Yeah, there's no
There's no
secret, just
secret.
an
Okay.
approval resolution.
Okay, so would someone like to make a motion to approve the resolutions?
I'll make that motion.
Dennis, second.
Second.
Peter, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Sadlon, Mr. Wenske. Yeah. So the next thing on the agenda is Cedar Hill Landscaping, Depaolis, 18 East Mountain Road North, Cold Spring. And I'm just going to read the information that's on the agenda. It's a major project. The applicant proposes to construct a new 48 by 80 garage/barn on the property to house equipment for landscape company. Site improvements will include an extension of the driveway, employee parking, and material sorters. The use of the existing single-family home will continue, and existing apartment of the garage will be utilized for office of the landscaping company. So we have these approvals in front of us as well. Ron, do you have any comments?
No, the board has accomplished all necessary procedural actions pursuant to code. You've also made necessary referrals. Since it's a commercial project, there's actually two resolutions before you tonight for consideration. The first one that should be considered is the resolution adopting a negative seeker declaration. That's before you for action.
So does anyone on the board have any comments? Okay, so in that case, I'd like to, if someone would like to make a motion to approve seeker, make a negative declaration. Peter, second.
I'll second that.
Dennis, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and next,
Now that action is done, you also have before you a draft site plan approval for the same project. Again, identifying the typical conditions of the board that came out of review of the project plans and public comment.
okay. Any comments on the site plan resolution? Okay, would someone like to make a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Dennis, second. Laura, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. So for the next item on the agenda, Neil Toman's going to chair.
We are at
Hunt Potter.
Front Potter. Ron, would you mind backing up? This is an amendment to a site plan that we approved when 2019.
That's correct. The applicant originally came before the board. They had significant improvements proposed to the property, including a pool, spa area, a patio deck in the area of the pool, fairly significant 10-foot high retaining wall to create the level pad for all those improvements I just described. There was significant site clearing that was performed or proposed at the time. And they also did significant screening, buffering, landscaping along the southerly property line. After that approval, they completed all the site work, which encompassed some 0.6 of an acre disturbance. They also, at the time, had received approval for some renovation of the decks that existed along the rear of the property. Those deck improvements, to my knowledge, was never done. And in the intervening period, now that the other improvements and the significant site disturbance has been completed and in the ground, the applicant has decided to expand those decks to some degree. I think the extent of improvements, as I've seen them, is to increase the decks that were originally approved by about a third.
So is there any additional disturbance that goes along with the expansion of square footage?
No, the expansion of these decks is within an area that was to be disturbed by the original approval. So
So
that,
the piers and the footings and everything is going to be in the same place. We don't have any more.
right, it's
ground
within an
disturbance.
area that was to be disturbed.
Okay.
And-
So it sounds like, so we have two options here. We can have board discuss that either there's no significant change and we vote to amend the site plan here, or we can have our discussion, and if we decide that there is significant change, we can back up and go do another site visit. So with that, We'll start, we'll move from Heidi. Anything you want to say, Heidi?
I would like to have a site visit because I don't believe I think I joined the board after this visit was made. So it's hard for me to picture. I vaguely recall this project, but I don't believe that I was ever at a site visit for it.
Peter?
I'd like to do a site visit too, because the configuration of the deck as it's now been reconfigured. I just would like to be able to see who sees what in the neighborhood. And if there's anything that, becomes a problem there.
Okay, all right, thank you. Dennis?
Based on the information provided, I personally don't feel I need a additional site visit. I recall the site pretty clearly. And the expansion isn't really I'm looking at it, of any great magnitude.
Okay. Laura?
Yeah, I think I'd like to go on a site visit. But based upon what Ron is saying, it sounds like it's not going to be too impactful. But I just want to confirm.
Okay,
I could go either way. I guess what I'd like to know, I don't know if anyone's here representing, sorry, Cecilia? Oh, sorry. I don't know if anyone is here representing the applicant.
Yeah, Mark
Hold on,
Sroziak here.
I'm just curious about what the footprint is for the house and how much this adds to the overall
But I
footprint.
just want to.
Can I be heard? Mark Sroziak?
Way. I guess what I'd like to know, I don't know if anyone's here representing, sorry, Cecilia? Oh, sorry. I don't know if anyone is here representing the applicant. That's me.
Yeah, Mark Sroziak here.
I'm just curious about what the footprint is for the house and how much this adds to the overall
But I
footprint.
just want to.
Can everyone hear me?
I guess what I'd like to know, I don't know if anyone's here representing, sorry, Cecilia? Oh, sorry. I don't know if anyone is here representing the applicant. That's me.
Yeah, Mark Sroziak here.
I'm just curious about what the footprint is for the house and how much this adds to the overall
But I
footprint.
just want to.
Can everyone hear me?
I guess what I'd like to know, I don't know if anyone's here representing, sorry, Cecilia? Oh. Footprint is for the house and how much this adds to the overall footprint. I guess what I'd like to know, I don't know if anyone's here representing, sorry. Oh, maybe we should shut it down and start up again. Yeah, because the public is gonna want to see this, yeah, I think. Cheryl, if you could just put in the chat that we're having technical, yeah.
Is everyone on mute? The other people are on Zoom?
I don't even know what my voice sounds like. That was really
Doesn't it
bizarre.
sound weird when you hear
Yeah, it's
yourself?
really
Yeah.
weird. Yeah.
Somebody said the live feed is lost, so I don't know.
Can I be heard?
Maybe in the meantime, Cheryl, you could just ask them in the chat if they. I don't even know what my voice sounds like. That was really
Doesn't it
bizarre.
sound weird when you hear
Yeah, it's
yourself?
really
Yeah.
weird.
See if they can speak now. Somebody said the live feed is lost, so I don't know.
Can't hear that.
Can I be heard?
Maybe in the meantime, ask them in the chat if they. I don't even know what my voice sounds like. That was really bizarre. Yeah, it's really weird.
See if they
Kim, the square footage of the house.
Can't hear that.
Can I be heard?
Momentum.
Can everyone hear me?
Seems like we have enough site visit desires that we might as well, get a site visit.
Okay.
We don't need one more. Otherwise, we're tied, right? Mhm.
I didn't vote yet.
I don't need,
Everyone hear me?
it's like we have enough. Okay, so then now what happens?
Decide if you're going to require a public hearing or not, depending on whether there's a significant change in the site plan. If there isn't, then you can, if you're in a position to direct Ron to prepare approval resolutions.
Mhm.
If there is a significant change in the site plan, then you have to hold a public hearing.
Okay.
Yes, hi, can you hear us? We're in the Zoom chat room.
For a vote on whether to have a public hearing.
Whether you consider it a significant or substantial change to the original site plan. So that could be a motion either way.
If there isn't, then you can, if you're in a position. A motion on that, because the board has to make a determination if there's a substantial change to the site plan, or should I say, the proposed change is a substantial change to the approved site plan or not. So somebody should either make a motion that it is, or that it's not. Then you can have a second and a vote on it.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion? Help me out here.
That this is not a substantial change to the existing site plan.
Change in the site plan. Would anyone like to make the motion that it's not a significant change in the site plan?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and all opposed? Okay, so now,
The vote.
okay, so sure,
I'm sorry.
no, that's all right, go ahead.
This is not a substantial change to the existing. It was unanimous vote, but it is not a substantial change, so there won't be a public hearing. Well, they have to direct you to prepare an approval resolution.
Any luck with that? Okay, well, they just probably got the answer that they wanted,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Now we have to make a motion to have Ron prepare a resolution to approve the amendment to the site plan.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, close enough. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, all opposed? Ron?
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. We encourage you to attend, now that we can, we should attend the meetings.
Right. Okay. So now it's me, right?
We are Hudson Highlands or?
Yeah.
Hudson Highlands and then
Hudson.
Hudson Highlands and then Garrison,
Right.
okay.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is returning business, a discussion which is on the Hudson Highlands Reserve, which was held over from the March 17th meeting. I first of all like to go to Steve to talk to us about what we're doing here with the FEIS.
Sure. The final environmental impact statement has been being reviewed by AKRF and Mr. Gaynor and the applicant for the last few months. And they can speak to the changes and their position as to whether all of the comments that were made at the public hearing have been answered and adequately answered, assuming that the board finds that all of the issues raised at the public hearing have been adequately answered. It would vote to accept the FEIS. Once the FEIS is accepted, a notice is filed with the state, and you have to wait 10 days from the filing of the notice of the acceptance of the completed FEIS for public comments. Once those 10 days are up, then the board's consultants will prepare a draft finding statement for the board to consider at its next meeting. And if the board is satisfied with the draft finding statement prepared by its consultants, it will adopt the finding statement, and then the secret process will be complete, and the board will proceed to consideration of the substantive request for a conservation subdivision.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, you ought to ask the consultants as to what their position is in regard to the completeness of the FEIS.
Right, and,
So
I was
that's
gonna-
Ron and AKRF. They care to,
Sure. I don't have a mic, I'll try to talk loud.
Here.
yeah.
Aaron Werner, AKRF. So back in December, the December meeting, we expressed our additional comments at that time on issues of voice in the document, tone, some other outstanding substantive issues that we asked the applicant to address. The board members also had some comments that they wanted incorporated into the document at that time. So the applicant went ahead and did that. They submitted in March, early March, a redlined Word file of the FEIS, which included, all addressing the comments from AKRF and the board. We've reviewed that. We offered some final notes in that document, which I provided to Cheryl, and I think she shared it with everybody else. AKRF's last, what we're calling our final notes in that, are highlighted, so you can see what we offered in addition to what the applicant already has in there as track changes. So in our opinion, at this point, we feel that the FEIS is acceptable. Obviously, we wanted the board to take a look at it since the March meeting to see if the comments you had were addressed. And I also, the applicant made some changes to the plan. I think they want to present those. But, at this point, our position is that the document can be adopted if the board agrees to it. And then we would move ahead with posting a notice of completion, which has to go to all the involved agencies with a copy of the document. There's a notice that gets posted to the DEC's ENB that has to appear. And then there's a 10-day period that Steve mentioned. And then if we get the go ahead from the board, we will draft the finding statement for your consideration.
AKRF and my office is working concurrently on the review of all the EAS documents throughout the process. And so I concur with their findings.
Okay. So at this point, it would be appropriate to ask the applicant to speak.
Good evening. My name is Richard O'Rourke, and I'm with the law firm of Keenan Bean PC, obviously representing the applicant and the owner, who is here this evening, Ulysses Luciaga, who's a resident here in the town of Philipstown. I've listened carefully to what Steve Gaba said, as well as Aaron, and they properly outlined what the lawful and legal procedures are that must be followed. We now have reached the point of the time when the board had over 8 weeks to review the last document that was submitted, and which we now know has been responsive to the comments that have been raised by your consultant. So we would respectfully request that you follow the procedure and proceed.
Okay.
Comments from the board? Or,
So,
I don't know.
yeah, I think that's, sorry, did you, I'm hearing something over there. Okay. So at this point, does anyone on the board have any comments? Heidi, go ahead.
In my opinion, after a hard look at the FEIS, I don't feel that it reflects my views of the project. In particular, I find very persuasive the comments of the Conservation Board with respect to the lack of adequate wildlife corridors. I also think that there is not sufficient consideration of protecting the pond. I know we discussed this the last time this project came up. Can you not hear me? Okay. Should I start over?
No, I heard you.
Okay. So I do not think the FEIS reflects adequate consideration of wildlife corridors, adequate protection for the pond. I do not think it takes into account sufficiently the comments that were made about concerns about the project's failure to take into account the intentions behind the conservation subdivision local law. And in addition, the Conservation Board has raised concerns that I don't think have been addressed, including regarding the stormwater pollution prevention plan. And concerns about the homeowners association and how the planning board could ensure that the project will actually reflect some of what is contained in the FEIS, which without protections to ensure that those that the homeowners association would actually make sure that the properties contain the provisions that have been expressed currently in the FEIS. I feel that there is not we have no assurance that those provisions will actually go into place. Most importantly, however, is the wildlife corridors, the habitat fragmentation, and my concern and the concerns about protecting the pond and the wetlands. Therefore, I think we need to have further changes before I could vote to accept the document.
Okay.
And if I may make one reference to the document, it specifically says that there is an agreed upon total number of homes. And that is not I know we discussed this, but I do not believe that we had an agreed upon total number of homes. We discussed that topic, but I do not think that it's the case that there's an agreed upon number of homes between the applicant and the planning board.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but they're, as I understand it, between the last time that we talked about these things, one home has been removed. Am I right about that?
Yes, that is correct.
And and the other thing that we requested was to remove more homes from around the pond. So I understand that one has been moved from that part. Is that correct?
We certainly can go through the plans here. What we've done is we've widened the corridor, the wildlife corridor, by obviously removing one home and then widening the area that was identified as the wildlife corridor. Insofar as the intention of a conservation subdivision, I would make it clear that the conservation subdivision that was reviewed over the last 8 years, all of the homes and sites have been removed from the property that was classified by your consultants and the board as having conservation value. There is not one single home that's in any of the conservation area properties that were so classified, including the ones that had very low conservation value. Insofar as the intention of a conservation easement, a conservation subdivision, I'll defer to Mr. Gaba, but the intention of the legislation cannot override the clear provisions of the law. And while respectfully, you may say that's the intention, what the law provides for, and there's adequate case law to suggest and to say that it's what the literal provisions are. From our position, we comply. We're setting aside almost 80% of the land to be conserved in perpetuity. And we've removed the disturbance for the homes from any of the property that was classified as having conservation value. So that's our position.
Okay. So Heidi, does that answer your question about the number of homes? The number of, as I understand it, from what we've reviewed in the past, the number of homes, Ron came up with a figure, they came up with a figure, and we're now, Ron, where are we now in
Yeah,
terms of that?
the conservation subdivision regulations permit the utilization of a formula based on site constraints for the overall project. That formula that we reviewed identified the lot count as 24 units were permitted. There was some discussion that goes back an extended period that the applicant felt an additional number of lots was permitted. The applicant has now agreed to prosecute a 24 lot subdivision. So that's what's represented on the latest FEIS. So I think the lot count is permitted by code and it's confirmed by the applicant as to the intent of this project to conform.
Okay. Peter, do you have any comments?
Just a few, and I do want to stick to the code as much as possible. I don't want to just be talking about my own preferences, but the HOA disturbs me because it's an all volunteer group who tend to diminish their interest over time, is my experience. And although there'll be a board and a volunteer group of people in the HOA, I would like to see a full-time administrator who can't look the other way, can look at the problems that may be arising in the HOA plan of what they would like to do. It's not legal, you know, I think that oversight is a great thing to have, and that would be for the HOA. I'm sad that there is no public access. It gives me a feeling of like a gated community, and I'm not too happy about that. I wish there were some way to control public access so that it didn't do some damage to the land, but I guess there really is no way to do that. But on the in the code, it says, and I'm talking about character now, preserving important natural attributes of the land. I tend to think the pond is pretty much one of the most important attributes of that particular piece of conservation, hopefully conservation subdivision, and most conservation value should be protected. 175, 73. Again, there were these are things about character, but they're in the code, and they're something that we should talk about. I think that the clustering of homes around the pond and then trickling up the water complex could be a serious problematical thing for the water situation around there. And then they spread out up to where the equestrian center was going to be. So there are the houses up there. I don't know what type of impact that they're going to have on that slope that they're going to be at the foot of. So I'd like to know if there was anything, if we need to send out another group of people to say, this is not a wildlife corridor, this is not going to interrupt the natural functioning of this particular space, which is already, I know this is, somebody's opinion, but, already subject to the possibility of fragmentation and wildlife corridors and so forth. And that is all I have to say.
Okay. Dennis?
Yes, thank you. On these.
Oh, Mike.
Microphone.
Sorry. I'm going to reach out to our professional consultants on this matter. Really 3 questions. Does this plan as presented now meet the true consideration for conservation subdivision. Does the proposed project scope as defined now meet all the town's code requirements? And is there anything in this project now proposed that doesn't comply with town codes or even the comprehensive plan?
Well, the project meets code. There's no question about that. It meets all the requirements of conservation subdivision set forth in the town code. There's some talk, does it meet the, intention, the behind the comprehensive, or the conservation subdivision provisions of the town code. The clearest manifestation of the intent of the town board is the language that it used when it drafted the code. If it says that they don't have to vary the size of the lots, it means the town board did not intend them to have to vary the size of the lots. If it did, it would have said so in the code. So, I mean, I understand the sentiment of persons who've raised those comments, whether it's from the public or otherwise. But the fact of the matter is, if it meets the code, as a matter of law, it meets the intent of the town code. So, the comprehensive plan is something that you should always keep in mind in terms of the approvals that you grant. But the comprehensive plan is not law. The comprehensive plan does not override the terms set forth in the town zoning code. And this plan meets the town zoning code.
Very good. Thank you, Steve.
I'm gonna wait for comments.
Okay, yeah.
No, my comments were much along the side of Dennis's, and so I'm happy with the questions and answers that we've gotten so far.
Right. So as I see it, the applicant, we've asked them to change the tone. We asked them to remove the house. We've asked them to move houses, at least, make a change to what is around the pond. I think that they've met the criteria for us to approve the FEIS, so I'm prepared to do that.
Yeah, I think the only thing, I am a little slightly concerned, just on my perspective of the amount of work that is regarding the construction and the amount of work that's going to happen around the area. So just to say that I know that, part of the FEIS there was in the large document, inclusive of a construction mobilization plan and understanding of the phasing. There is some concern that if you are to continue and do all of that construction work, it will affect the local area and the disturbance will be major. But that's just a personal opinion. So, and it has nothing to do with what we're voting on and what we're approving. So that's just my opinion.
Okay, so procedurally, where are we?
The next step, unless the board wishes to discuss it further or hear from the applicants some more, would be for someone to make a motion to adopt the FEIS. And then there would be a second and a vote on it.
Okay. So is anyone prepared to make a motion to adopt the FEIS?
I'll make that motion.
Dennis, second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
sorry. Oh, do a roll call vote. Okay. So we'll start at the end with Heidi.
I vote no.
Peter,
I vote no.
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
yes. Motion passes.
Okay, so the next step would be to direct the consultants to prepare the finding statement.
So do we need a motion for that?
Well, they have to do it anyway, but I suppose you'd want, oh, here you go.
I would add that, but before that, I think the FEIS next has to be finalized, cleaned up in a final form, submitted to the town, and it has to be distributed with the notice of completion to all the involved agencies that got the draft EIS. So that's the next step on the applicant side. We have a notice of completion drafted. We'll talk with Steve about that when the document comes in and it's ready to be distributed. We'll talk with Cheryl about getting that out. The ENB notice, which is required by the state, has to appear, but their deadline for it being published is always on Wednesday at 6 p.m. So we can't submit that until next Wednesday. And it'll appear the following Wednesday in the ENB. Once the document is distributed, that's when that 10-day clock starts. And then following that, we can start preparing it, or you can tell us tonight that you want us to start preparing it and we can have it ready for the next meeting for you to review.
No problem. Whether they start preparing it immediately or whether you have them wait, there's that 10-day comment period, and the board will have to take into consideration any written comments that it receives before it acts on the finding statement. You'll get a draft in, you'll review it, you'll look at those comments before any action is taken. So, I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter whether you start right away or you wait, because it's just a draft document, but whatever you guys are more comfortable with is fine with me.
We can definitely start drafting it, and we can have it in advance of the next meeting for you to review.
I'm sorry, I'm.
The finding statement, yes.
Okay.
But just a reminder on the finding statement, there's two kinds of finding statements, right? There's a positive finding statement, which means that you're ready to approve this project because all the impacts that were identified are being mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. There is, if you adopt a negative finding statement, meaning that you don't want to approve this project, you have to provide a reason why that's the case. But it sounds like, from what I'm seeing with the vote, it seems like you're moving forward with the way the FEIS is presented, the way the plan's presented. So I just wanted to make that clear that there's two kinds of findings.
Okay. Yeah.
I have one question for Steve.
Sure.
Steve, with the approval of this project, it was all predicated with access off of Route 9. Say if DOT, for whatever reason, puts the kibosh on that, where do we stand?
Well, they would have to come back with amended plans because they won't be able to access the project from the spot shown on their plans.
And it would be another approved process.
Well, it would still be this approval process. They'll come in with revised plans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I'm bringing it up, it was the question originally brought up and then taken away was access off of East Mountain Road, New York. So, which should be a real problem.
I understand, but you should cross that bridge when you come to it. Right now, the proposal is access off 9.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so do we need to direct Aaron? Do we need a
Do you want to
motion?
start right away, or do you want to have him wait until the 10-day period is over?
How difficult is it to incorporate changes?
It makes no difference. You can incorporate any changes you want. You're going to discuss the draft document at your next meeting. I would have him start now. I
Okay.
see no problem with that, but
Okay,
it's up to you.
no, it's fine. I just was trying to figure out
Okay,
the,
then you should have a motion
That
to
makes sense.
prepare the finding
Okay.
statement for consideration in the next meeting.
What kind of finding statement?
Well, the finding statement they're going to prepare, I would imagine anyway, is going to reflect what's in the EIS and in the FEIS. And if you disagree with their take on that, you'll say, hey, wait a minute, I don't agree with this, change that. And then you'll have the revised finding statement prepared for the next month's meeting.
Okay.
But, you got to start somewhere. This is where they'll start.
so would anyone like to make a motion to direct Aaron to prepare to start working on the draft of the finding statement?
I'll make that motion.
Dennis, second.
I'll second it.
Laura, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Heidi? Okay. Okay.
Thank you
So-
very much. And I guess we could coordinate with Aaron and with Steve in terms of whether you need hard copies, we can do flash drives, whatever, in terms of the circulation to various agencies. Some prefer now not to get hard copies, which I can understand. They'd rather have a flash drive, but
Just let it go.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
sure. Okay.
All right.
All right, leads us to Garrison Golf Club, PDD Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, project major site plan and 3-lot subdivision. Modifications to the Garrison Golf Course, PDD, to permit relocation of the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival to the site, new theaters, outdoor pavilion, and housing for artists and visitors. Existing banquet restaurant facility to remain. Expected action item, public hearing was closed on March 17. Board to discuss April 7 letter just received from the applicant's consultant reducing the overall scope of the project. So what I'm expecting, I guess we're expecting to hear from Mr. Hollis. And yes, we have your amendments. We have your, well, we've got your amendments, and we have a folder of equal size with letters from the public. Now, we did get these last week. We're still looking at them. But Mr. Hollis, would you care to tell us a little bit about the changes that you've made to the application?
Thank you, Mr. Tolman and members of the board. It's good to see you in person again. P. Daniel Hollis, excuse me, Hollis, Laidlaw, and Simon, attorneys for Hudson Valley Shakespeare and the Garrison. Mr. Tolman made an accurate representation of what's happened since our last meeting and our appearance before you, most of us by Zoom. But what we have done is provided a procedural fact sheet that AKRF was provided, as well as Mr. Gaynor, Mr. Gaba, on April the 7th, that outlines the scope of the changes that were made. And Mr. Johannessen's on his way. He'll be here shortly, probably by the time I finish, to handle any questions you might have. But I just wanted to cover a couple of procedural aspects. We also received, after the last meeting, a 13-page submission of questions from the public and from the board, categorized by topic, that was somewhat similar to the outline of the EAF Part 3. We, on April 21st, April 14th, rather, with the permission of Chairman Zuckerman, made a further submission to your board of about 54 pages, which included those questions and our responses to each of the questions. And I can fairly state, his timing is impeccable, isn't it? I can fairly, and we didn't even rehearse, actually. I can say with 100% certainty that there's nothing in the questions that's different than any question that had been posed by AKRF to our Part 3 submission, or any of the questions posed by you of the board. So to quote Ecclesiastics, nothing new under the sun with regard to those questions, and we answered them all. With that in mind, I respectfully submit that based upon our EAF submission, our responses to the AKRF's questions and comments with regard to the Part 3 submission and our responses there too, the fact sheet that outlines the changes to the project, the reduction in scope. The reduction in scope, it's important to remember, was the result from comments by the board and by the public to the scope of the project. And we listened and we responded accordingly. So I think that at the May meeting, procedurally, hopefully Mr. Zuckerman will be with us, so we'll have a full board. I think we can have a meaningful discussion of those questions and answers and any other aspect of the Part 3, so that at the end of that meeting, your board will be in a position to direct your consultants to prepare a declaration to vote on at the June meeting with regard to a secret determination. So with that being said, I think I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Johannessen to walk through his April 7th letter to your board, outlining in detail what the changes were in the reduction in the scope of the project, and entertain any questions you have with regard to that reduction and that April 7th submission. And if you want to go further to discuss any of our responses to the 13 pages of questions, we're glad to do that as well. We have Ms. McKinnon is here by Zoom. Mr. Canning, I believe, or Ms. Connell from Kimley Horn is here to talk about traffic. And Mr. Johannessen's behind me, and the ever-present Glenn Watson behind me as well. So we're here. Up in front of you is a board, for those that might be in the audience of interest, that is part of the submission, a side-by-side comparison of the previous submission and the reduced project. So Jan, are you ready to take over?
I'm ready, yes.
Good job.
Okay. You guys made quick work of your agenda so far. As Dan mentioned, we put together what we're calling a fact sheet. It's a memorandum or a letter from the project team on out of my office.
Good question. What is on that board and trying to find it in the submission? The board.
This is the
You're
comparison.
gonna be referring to it.
This is
What
a
drawing number, what exhibit
I'm
number?
not sh- This is not numbered.
Yeah, I think I got it. Thank you. I'm getting there. It's okay, proceed.
It's okay to proceed. It's exhibit 1.
Thank you.
What the fact sheet is just an identification of the reduction in project scope and how the reduction in scope has reduced significantly the impacts of the project. And we tried to highlight or categorize them into some of the major topics that have been of the board's most concern. So as Dan indicated, the two significant changes in scope include the removal of the 20-room hotel and the indoor theater. What was the 20-room hotel? It was a proposed 15,600 square foot gross floor area, 2-story hotel that would accommodate a total of 40 guests. You'll remember in the 2005 PDD approval, there was a 40-room hotel approved as part of that project. We had reduced it then to 20 rooms, and now it's entirely out of the project scope. The indoor theater was a 1-story, 14,000 square foot building, 38 feet in height, 225 seats. And it would have expanded the performance season by 3 additional months, April, May, and December. Going through just the topics of interest, the total number of structures has always been of concern to the board, and total number of seats. So these are 2 of the larger buildings that were proposed as part of the project, and they're now eliminated. Total square footage reduction, 29,600 square feet. That's a 39% reduction in floor area. The applicant has also reduced the number of seats associated with the tent theater from 530 to 500 seats. So what we're talking about here is a total reduction of 255 seats, 20 rooms, and 40 overnight guests. The maximum occupancy of the site, always been a concern of the board. We had identified in the Part 3 EAF with the prior proposal that the maximum, theoretical maximum, very conservative number, would have been 1,124 persons on the site, theoretical maximum. With reduction of the 2 buildings, the new theoretical maximum is 853 persons. That's a 24% reduction, or 271 persons. Obviously, I'd indicated that the performance season is now reduced because of the removal of the indoor theater, and we provided a side-by-side comparison of the performance calendar. This is a figure that you've seen before in the EAF, and you could just see clearly what's being eliminated. Attached to our memorandum was a technical memo from Kimley Horn dated April 6th. I won't get into that level of detail. We have folks from Kimley Horn present tonight, but that memo really just went through and identified the improvements to the level of service of the various intersections studied. And also indicated that, of course, all of our previously proposed traffic mitigation items are still part of the proposal. The things that we think are important and that we feel that you think are important, the traffic light, the turning lanes on Route 9, the striping at the intersection of Snake Hill and Route 9, all still part of the proposal. With the reduction in the number of people on the site at any given point comes a reduction in parking demand and the amount of parking that we need to serve the project. And those numbers are, we had proposed 462 parking spaces. The new parking count is 381 parking spaces. That's a reduction of 17.5%. We're going to keep the 130 parking spaces that exist on Snake Hill Road that are proximate to the maintenance facility as overflow, although we don't really think that they'll see much action. With the reduction in parking comes reduction in the size of the parking. And one of the, I think, great benefits of the reduced scope in the project environmentally is our ability to remove in its entirety the proposed parking lot and driveway from the wetland buffer. So we're able to reduce the number of parking spaces. We're able to push that parking lot entirely out of the wetland buffer along with the access road. And that was when we walked the property with the Conservation Board, that was really one of their main sticking points. Not so much the bridge, but the driveway. They asked us at the time, can you move this out of the buffer? And at the time, we really couldn't because we needed those parking spaces to serve the project. And that, of course, has changed. So I just reiterate that that entire parking area is going to be pervious parking. It's not going to be paved. It's going to be gravel or some other permeable surface. The numbers on our water demand also get reduced. The water demand under our prior proposal was 16,453 gallons per day. The hotel, previously proposed hotel, had a value of 2,200 gallons per day. The theater, 900 gallons per day. So that was a reduction of 3,100 gallons per day, or 19%. Our new demand for the entire project, including the new residence for Mr. Davis, is 13,353 gallons per day, 750 of which correlate to Mr. Davis's residence. So associated with the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, water demand is 12,603 gallons per day. I wanted to note that the increase from the existing condition, obviously, there's still an increase from what we're proposing at 12,606 or 3 gallons per day to what is occurring now at 9,820 gallons per day. That's an increase of 28%. But if you look back at your 2005 PDD approval, we're actually less than what was approved at that point, by about 2,717 gallons per day, when you could compare our new proposal to the 2005 PDD, much of which did not get constructed. That is the numbers. We're happy to go over any questions you have, but I thought that would be at least a good overview so you could see how significant the changes are and what they mean from a seeker standpoint.
Mr. Canning's on the phone. Pardon me? Oh, I see. Does he have something prepared or?
No.
Okay, just in case, just so we know he's there. So I guess we're looking for comments from the board at this point, whether, I mean, again, as we started this section, we have a pile of papers to go over both from the applicant and from the public. So I know I'm going to be getting a lot of questions. Cheryl, where's Cheryl? About public access. I'm sure everyone's going to want to read the latest. It's all up there. Okay. So yeah, that's my only comment, but we'll go down. Heidi.
I mean, I certainly appreciate the fact that the project has been reduced in size, but I still think there needs to be more development on soil contamination issues. The water issues raised by I think very concerning issues about the water table that was raised by residents. The noise issues that were raised, the impacts particularly impacts, when there's weddings and shows going on, whether the noise impacts are going to be more severe on residents than is currently reflected in the application. And that's, I mean, some of the testimony does not seem consistent with some of the testimony that we've heard at the public hearing does not seem consistent with the materials that the applicant has presented with respect to noise in particular, also water. I think that needs more development, those two issues in particular. I think also the traffic issues still are very concerning. I think the testimony at the public by many residents raises very significant issues about traffic that require further exploration. This is not to say that I just think they need further exploration, further development. The soil contamination issues have hardly been developed at all. Certainly the applicant has flagged those issues, but I don't feel like I know. In fact, the applicant has basically said they're not certain how they're going to deal with it. I think more sampling is needed with respect to the soil contamination. And I think more information about how that issue will be handled, whether there could be impacts on water quality. I'm concerned about the location of the tent based on the scenic values of the site. A lot of issues, in my opinion, were raised at the public hearing that still are of concern, even with the reduced size of the project. So I do think that there needs to be more fact development. That's I guess where I come out. I can keep going, but I don't want to take more than my share of the time.
Thanks for your input, Heidi. And I think that where we're headed, I think where we started from Mr. Hollis and our advice from Mr. Gaba was that this is what we're going to try and do next month, is we're going to try and get feedback from the board on what we're going to, which is why I started with the pile of papers from the applicant and the pile from the public, because I think that's what we're trying to do between now and next month, and then come back to the table with hopefully some more concise looks at what we're talking about here. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Procedurally 100% correct. But if I might just make a couple of points.
I'm not sure I want to go toe to toe, point to point right now.
Oh, no, I'm not just one.
I don't want to get into a back and forth with each board member.
No, but I
apologize. I thought you were asking
not at
me.
all. That's not
Okay.
I
didn't mean to
not
open
what I'm
it.
saying at all. I'm just saying like that we are here to air it out. There's no harm in pointing out some general directions, but we have a lot of reading to do between now and next month. And then we can
I just want to make
it'll
a
be
point.
a more direct conversation, but go ahead. But let's try to avoid going back and
Oh,
forth.
no, I don't want to do that. We'll be here until the next meeting,
Right.
if, with a couple
Denny's
of breaks
closes,
in between
right.
for
So
medical treatment. But to respond to Ms. Wendell's point, that our responses to the question, the only professional report other than in the record is the Mahalski report. And Mr. Waddell, who's here to answer any questions tonight, if that became necessary, has responded to that in our 64 pages or 54 pages of answers to the 13 pages of questions. So there is responses to all the points that you made reference to have been addressed in the questions. Even if you're not satisfied with the answers in the EAF Part 3, they're further developed in the responses to the questions. So I just wanted to point
No,
that out
that's
to Ms.
fine, that's
Wendell and
fine.
anybody else that may have the
As long
same
as-
thinking.
And I'll tell you, Mr. Hollis, if, and I assure you that we will be reading yours, and I will hope that you will be reading the letters from the public.
I've read every one of them.
Okay,
But as I said, there's only one expert report.
okay. Peter,
The only concern I have, I mean, Heidi's concerns, I assume, like, as Mr. Hollis said, will be procedurally addressed as we go down the line to DEIS, FEIS, and all the others. My only question, just this is for information, traffic light at Snake Hill and Travis Corner on Route 9, is that before the DOT?
Yes, sir.
It is.
Yeah, the warrant has been submitted. Mr. Canning can correct me if I'm in error, but
That's good. I just wanted to know that.
But I don't think we're talking about a DEIS and an FEIS at the moment, though.
No.
Yeah,
I
just to make
saying
that record clear.
There's a
Okay.
road ahead.
Well, I hope that road is a dead end in this conversation and what you already have, but
thank you, Peter. Dennis?
Well, I do have some concerns, but I have no problem tabling it to when we have the information digested a little bit better. I mean, they're really a handful, but should I?
It's up to you. I was just giving my thinking on this, that there's a
Okay.
lot of
Yeah,
reading,
they're
a lot of
pretty
reading. to do.
short,
If
pretty
you
short
want
and
to, I mean, we're trying, remember, we're trying to give them some direction too.
sure. And our people are on Zoom that aren't here, so they'll hear you.
They're on the clock, so let's.
Sure. Some of my main concerns, one is the location of the performance tent, not necessarily regarding the view of that, but when we had our first walkthrough, it was an incredibly windy day. And I am very concerned with the structural integrity of that tent. I know some engineer is going to be putting his stamp on there, and I'm just very concerned with that aspect of it.
That's a point of emphasis. I'm not in all the design discussions, but I know that point has been.
Even I know they're putting a little bit of a berm for a buffer behind the tent on the south side, southwest side, I guess it would be considered. But it is a tremendous exposure to that wind. Just my own observation, concerned with public safety with that. The other concern I have is the departing traffic off of Snake Hill Road, either be it with the new bridge or the existing location. As people are departing the venue, going down Snake Hill to 9D, when they're going to be making that left-hand turn onto 9D going south, I can see an incredible backup of traffic and a problem where that's going to need some either direct control regarding a police officer or something in order to have traffic moving freely there. There's a stop sign, but once people start heading out and you have 100 or so cars backed up, that's one of my observations that I've seen myself down there. The other one is on Route 9, or leaving the venue with the existing entryway, driveway onto Route 9, when you have people trying to make a left-hand turn going north on Route 9. And if that new traffic light is at the corner, there's going to be a backup of vehicles stopping people from making that left-hand turn. And I could see someone being very courteous, letting somebody pass. You're going to wave them on. And as they're waving them on, there's going to be a car coming north on Route 9 that they're not going to see. So just a consideration of potential problems down that way. The other one is really water consumption and have the possible effect on the other local wells in the community. It's been voiced many times with our public here.
Jan alluded to that. If I can just talk about the water, so I don't forget it, that in 2005, there was an EIS then. The applicant submitted to that voluntarily. And in that analysis under the EIS, there was a water budget determined, and we have been at lower than that.
I understand that. We're reading this. They're all numbers.
They're all numbers, right?
Okay. When it comes to actual use, daily use, weather conditions, everything else, it could be, changed. It can be vulnerable to, and it's a concern that something might develop. I don't know if there'd be any type of contingency plan associated with that. The other item, and it's since the venue has been reduced in size, scope, is there a way to reconsider rebuilding or putting a new bridge at the location of the existing bridge, so we're not dealing with a new exiting location that seems to be affecting a lot of people's opinion on the wrong, that being a problem. So that's just a comment other than
So noted.
at this point in time. So
Thank you. And
Thank you, Dennis. Laura?
I actually want to just pick up where Dennis left off. So one of the things that I would recommend is going back to that lovely walkthrough where we enjoyed the rain and the cold wind. There was a mention, and I think Neil alluded to it at the walkthrough. We understand the location. We understand, for us that can visually imagine what kind of span bridge we're looking at. Just as a recommendation, I do think that there is some benefit for us to understand the mass bulking that's going to be needed. You're going to need something from the Snake Hill Road in order for it to be footed, in order for that span bridge to work. And I think it would just be helpful for us to even just look at what that mass looks like. Doesn't have to be fully designed, but just to understand what the impact is to that wall and to the retaining wall, and then how it spans across and how it meets to the other side, I think will be very helpful for us to kind of visualize the impact of that.
we have a little bit of that in Jan's submission.
Okay.
And we'll deal with the water budget and with that in May.
Great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kim?
Okay, so I was going to say exactly what Laura said. It would just be nice to have a drawing that gave us a feeling of what the mass is, because when we were on site, we kept talking about it being, people kept saying, oh, that's going to be really big. It's 20 feet, it's, 27 feet, whatever. So additionally, it would be helpful to have perhaps drawings of where the new parking will, where the missing part, instead of just showing us an absence on a drawing, show us exactly where the parking is going to be and how it's going to be different.
How would you like that beyond what the site plan?
Well, so, what we have is this, right? And it's pretty small.
Okay.
And there are a whole bunch of little circles. Your version is much larger than ours. And it's just helpful to have something that, I can look at it on a screen, but that's not necessarily, it would just be nice to have a piece of paper that's, a reasonable size, to just show us the absence of the building and, what's going to be there instead, and the absence of the parking.
Okay.
Okay. And also I'm thinking just the indoor theater, but also, the hotel. Because I see in the drawing that you have here that it looks like there's some paths where there was nothing before. And so it'd be interesting just to see what that intention is. I assume we're going to talk about this, but when we talk about mitigation of the chemicals on the greens, I would like some guidance from council on what we're permitted to request, and not right now, but going forward, because that is going to be a concern. That's something people brought up. And then just for the, there's been a lot of discussion of the view where the tent is, and I'd like some, we have some, it's been my impression that the tent will basically be visible only from Route 9, because, you can, from far away distance, it's just, there isn't. But a lot of the public seems to think that, it's going to be visible from everywhere in Garrison. So if there's a way to convey that.
Will Ms. McKinnon's drawings show additional screening to soften the impact of the view from Route 9 to the tent location?
Right.
There's additional screening planned as submitted.
Sometimes the things that we get are photographs that aren't really, it's hard to interpret them. So if there were a way to sort of really convey what that's really going to look like, so the public has a better sense, that would be helpful.
Well, all the points that people have raised, be it, that there are only 3 greens that are being disturbed in the plans. That's number one. So it's not every green is going to be dug up and soil turned over. But every member of our team has heard, and we can make section drawings to present to you in person when we're here in May to help the board analyze and maybe more detail microscopically what it is we're talking about,
That would be
not
really
from
useful.
higher elevation, 15,000 feet.
Yeah.
Can I also ask, so to go to the tent and when we're looking at it from the view shed,
Mhm.
I'm going to assume that the colorization that you're going to use for the material is going to be very similar to the approach of the design. Meaning
Correct.
like, you don't want to go with a light color tent to then ultimately go through the design to then have like a bright pink one.
It's not going to be pink.
No, I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
But just to say that because the light and the color of the material will also change based upon how the foliage and all of that intermingles. So even if it is close to whatever ultimately the color or texture needs to be, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, and then we've done that view shed analysis from various locations off-site. So, the point is that there's no guarantee of a person's ability to see from the tent out. And what we're trying to, the secret determination, the impact is what the view is from outside in. So we've addressed that, I think. And we'll have that more specific for you in May as well.
Okay. You done?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Hollis. Thank you for giving us some more information. I tend to look at I have a list here of the questions, the areas of the project where I don't think we have enough in the way of drawings. And I know we brought this up at the site visits where there's been a couple of times we've had it with the housing, with the individual cabins, which is a pretty good example. Because there were, and we spoke about the dam and the condition of the dam, and there's been more than a couple times where the response from your team has been, well, that's not part of the seeker. That's for the site plan approval, or that's something and that's something. With the seeker, I would rather we know more than less, because what I don't want to do is get past the seeker and we get to the color of the tent, or we get to, why do you have 17 individual cabins instead of a dormitory? And we get into those questions and then have your team respond with, oh, well, that should have been brought up in seeker and that ship has sailed. So that and I think what I'm hearing also is when you're hearing, and I've spent some time on that side. So when you're hearing, I want to see more drawings. We need to see more drawings, because like many of people on this board, I'm afraid that we need to bring it up now. Let's air it out. So anything you can give us information on the bridge, the dam, the parking. I know I'm just repeating what my fellow board members have been saying, but I think that's an important thing for you to bring next time.
Well, then we'll have a discussion about the dam. We're in correspondence and communication with the DEC on that.
Which
to
is fine.
repair.
Even if you
Right.
just tell us that,
Right.
come tell us where the DOT is with the light. Tell me where the New York.
That's submitted. That
Yeah, dude, I think that's a better strategy.
Sure.
For you to say, okay, this is out with the DOT, this is out with New York State Dams and the DEC. Just
Both of
saying.
those points are
Okay.
accurate and status correct.
All right, very good. Anybody else on Garrison? Kim, did you want to, we have a little housekeeping to do, Kim Connor?
The artist lodging is not part of the phase 1 site plan. So it is part of the secret, but it's not part of the site plan.
Very good.
Okay. So I have a little housekeeping to do. I wanted to wait until we had come to the end of the public hearing process and to see if there were any other questions, but we received a letter, I think it was in January, from Joe Regley, who And also, I believe he put an ad in the newspaper requesting that I recuse myself from this project because my husband and I have made donations to the Shakespeare Festival in the past. I can tell you that in the particular, I don't know if you've ever donated money to someplace, but, you know, organizations will put your name on a list of, you know, these people donated at that level, these people donated at that level. So in the particular year that he's referring to, it looks like we donated about $10,000. I'd like to tell you what that $10,000 was. In any given year, we typically give about $5,000 to the Shakespeare Festival. We give money to other organizations. We pay for the fireworks in Cold Spring as a donation every year. We usually go to the gala for any number of organizations. So in that particular year, we took a table at the gala. Sometimes we take one, sometimes friends take one. And then to round it off, my husband got into a bidding war with one of his law partners and came home with a $3,600 case of wine. So, you know, that's a little personal and sort of the story of my life, but I take my job on this board very seriously. I have been on this board since 2009. I believe that I approach every project with integrity. I think most applicants that have come and had me ask them questions have found that I am serious and I ask very serious questions. So I don't think that it's necessary for me to recuse myself because I think I can be as balanced as I am with any project with this particular organization. Fair and impartial. Yeah, so that's, you know, much more than you want to know about me, but I'll leave it at that.
Very good. Thank you, Kim. Thank all the board members for their time. And can I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All in favor? Thank you. See you next month.